Hey guys, good morning. So today we're doing another splatter masking tutorial, and this time we're going to paint a galaxy scene. So the materials I have here on the table are a synthetic brush, a nice big soft floppy brush for applying lots of water and lots of color. I have Holbein neutral tint, Magello composed rose, Daniel Smith naphthalene maroon, Magello turquoise blue, Magello marine blue, and my old favorite, Daniel Smith undersea green. We're going to be painting on the Blick Premier 100% cotton rag watercolor block. This is my first time using this paper, so hopefully we can get a good feel for how much water it can take, and that can lead to further reviews. I've got 2 cups of water, my brush soap, and my Winsor & Newton masking fluid. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so it took a little doing, but I have prepared my Blick sketchbook for first use. And just like we did in the masking tutorial that went up the other day, we're going to use a synthetic brush. We're going to fill it full of brush soap. That makes it easier to peel out that masking fluid. Get it all up, and actually I think this brush had some paint in it. Maybe I can clean that out and then go ahead and prepare it for the masking fluid. There we go. And I always have a little bit of trouble with this bottle. It's a two-handed operation for me. There we go. And dippity-doo-dah. And then clean out our brush, remove any residual masking fluid, and tap this sucker off. And we need to give this a chance to dry. So our masking fluid has had a chance to dry. I went and grabbed, I think you guys might recognize this palette, and I've got some clean water over here. You really don't want to use the water you use to clean your brush off into. And we're actually going to want quite a bit. We're going to use, just for this tutorial, you can use whatever you want. I'm recommending vivid colors and dark colors though, just because we're doing kind of a night sky sort of thing. I'm going to use marine, no, I wanted to use this one, neutral tint, which I might need to buy some more of, because this is a very sad tube and this might be the end of the tube. I think that's just enough. So I'm going to use the smaller of the 2 synthetics and grab plenty of it and mix it up. Try to get all that painty goodness out. And then using my larger brush, I can do a wash with it. But first I want to go ahead and prepare my other colors, so that when I'm ready for them, I can start dabbing them on. So, marine blue, undersea green. I know you'd think that was my favorite color ever. Composed rose. Use this one a lot too. Turquoise blue. That one might be a bit of a problem because it looks like it's a little opaque. And naphthalene maroon. I don't think I have any good tube purples that I want to use for this. So this is what I'm going to use. Alright, big thirsty brush. And I'm going to start by laying on a really thick wet wash. Might even need to mix up more of it, but I'm just gonna thin it out with water for right now. And I should tell you now, you should go grab some kosher salt or some table salt or some flake salt, just any kind of salt if you have it, because I'm going to show you guys something else in a couple minutes. Clean that out a little bit. Now we're going to grab our marine blue. Our composed rose. Our turquoise blue. And we're working on cotton rag because cotton rag typically holds water longer, stays active, stays blendable longer. We've got a pocket of marine blue over there. So, using that thirsty brush technique I've demonstrated like a billion times already, gonna soak up the extra. Alright, naphthamine, marine, or maroon, not marine. And I'm getting streaking because there's bits of the paint in the bristles of my brush. And then undersea green. Alright, thirsty brush. Just gonna dab up some of the excess. Don't worry, it'll flow back in. It should flow back in. And then we're going to grab another paper towel. And we're going to lift in some areas somewhat randomly. I wish I had some clean water, but some vaguely clean water will work. Just gonna brush some of that out. Now I have a large area here where it is just maroon and pink. So yeah. Put in a little turquoise there. I'm gonna put in a little bit of, wow, more than a little bit apparently, too much a bit of rose. Just sort of work that out a little bit. And now we've got a pretty mess, which is fine. That's kind of what we were aiming for. Blend that out a bit. Get some more interesting colors here in the maroon because there's not a lot going on there. Some more interesting colors over here in the marine blue because that's really intense, but not necessarily very visually interesting. More pink. work it in there. Alright, so we've got a pretty interesting gamut of color. What I'm going to do is, I hope you grab that salt. We're going to sprinkle it because it's going to create kind of a snowflake pattern. And then we need to let that dry thoroughly. And some areas are wetter than others. Some areas are going to have more of an effect than others. It's one of those things also that you're not really sure if it worked until it's fully dry. So we're going to give it just such a chance. Just checking in on this, it is still damp, but isn't that pretty? That would be pretty just on its own or with something sort of ghostly painted in. It's almost a shame to slap another load of paint on it because it's so nice as is. So if you like the look of this, well, now you know how to do it. But I need to allow this to finish drying completely before I can knock those salt crystals off and progress. So this is finally dry, and it would honestly be beautiful for painting flowers on. I may just have to recreate this and do like a completely separate tutorial with that with some flower painting, but it's really pretty. So it's pretty much completely dry. I can go knock all the salt off of it. I'm going to use a drafting brush and stand over my trash can or maybe even the toilet and knock all this salt off. So I'll be right back. Since I liked this so much, I went ahead and scanned it as a 600 DPI scan, and that way I can play with it digitally. So I am going to activate my neutral tint, and I need to clean out, well, maybe not. Maybe I should just go grab another cup of water, because this one has basically become so infused with pigment that it's kind of a tint in itself. Additional clean cup of water achieved. So I'm going to soap up my synthetic brush again. Open up my Winsor & Newton masking fluid again. And off camera, dip my brush in again and do another layer of splatters, and that's going to give us some stars that hopefully look like they're in the background. This technique, your masking fluid does go everywhere. All right, clean out the brush again and give it a chance to dry. Alright, so that has dried. We can move on. So, first thing I'm going to do, drum roll please, I know it feels like sacrilege, we're going to paint some neutral tint on, and then using the clean out water from before, I'm going to kind of blend it out, and then using some of the regular water, I'm going to blend that out as well. Then I'm going to grab some more neutral tint. Some more of the multi-tonal wash water. Blend that out. Then some clean water, and give that a second because I just realized I was a big dumb and didn't cap my masking fluid, which is incredibly stupid of me. Then I'm going to soak up some of that excess with a thirsty brush. See, aren't you guys glad I taught you guys how to do that? Those of you who didn't know. Now, colors are looking a little bit muted. Let's go in and we're gonna, oh yeah, and because I just can't not, just gonna freehand some intenser, more intense colors here and there. Clean it out in that, and that way we're still capturing all that colorful goodness. I'm going to need to grab some more undersea green. And you guys probably think wet into wet are the only, either the only techniques I know how to do or my favorite techniques, which is definitely high up there on favorite, because you can really do a lot with wet into wet, and you don't have to be I really hate it when people are like, you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a skilled draftsperson. You don't have to have a lot of experience with the material to get a nice result when you're doing wet into wet techniques. I mean, some of the most skilled watercolor artists, that's how they primarily work, and they're able to get some really incredible things. I'm not knocking it. I'm just trying to impress how you can go from just very basic and easy to incredibly complicated and requiring not only a lot of skill but a lot of discretion. And then finally, I'm gonna grab some saturated marine blue and just, we've kind of left that area over there lighter, I should say, because I just love those splatters. And then we're gonna grab for the salt again, because I just loved how that turned out, but we're gonna use a lot less of it. We're gonna have a lot more discretion this time. We're just gonna when you think about this, we've pretty much used maybe 4 total techniques. We did a wash, we did a resist, we did some wet into wet dropping and splatter effects, and we're using a little bit of salt. So, and there are loads more tutorials online for painting beautiful galaxies. This is just a very simple one that demonstrates several techniques that are very useful. So we're going to give this a chance to dry as well. Just the camera so you guys can see where we're at. I just realized I should probably impress upon you guys that this is going to have a really long dry time, and I'm also noticing that on this layer the salt's not really having a whole lot of effect. I think oh, my hand's gonna shake too much for me to do it by hand, because I realized I want to do a little more salt now that it's kind of absorbed into the paper. But this is gonna take at least an hour to dry. That's the dry time I had last time. We're working with cotton rag. It stays open longer, but it means it takes longer to dry. So that's just something to keep in mind if you don't normally work with cotton rag. And you guys can also see the colors are a lot more muted, but I am okay with that. I'm glad I scanned it because I really loved those colors before, but we're still getting that nice sort of lighter stripe throughout. And as for the Blick paper, I'm really liking it, and I look forward to doing an in-depth review of it with a field test later on. So this has finally dried. I am going to take it over the garbage can and brush off that salt, and I'll see you guys in a sec. So we're ready to continue, and I'm going to do what I did before, and hopefully I can get, oh, most of that dried. Yeah. Reconstitute it a bit. We may have to open up the tube, which is now dried shut. But anyway, my goal is to put a dark layer and try to get it as dark as possible. I may even end up grabbing black. And there, this is just not going to be dark enough. However, it's a start. Then we're going to use some of this. Blend it out a bit. And we're basically, at least in my mind, we're reinforcing that band of lighter color. Then we're going to grab some of the white, or the clear really. Go ahead and muddy that up. Get some of that extra color out. And do the same here. And you can use a paper towel and lift up some of that color if you want. In fact, I'll go grab one. And just by kind of modeling where we're damping it, we can get some good color. So, I really need to probably go grab some black. So, I'm just kind of working straight from the tube since this tube is pretty close to over. And I'm just kind of mixing in some of that darker color. And it's nice and really dark over there. Mix some over here, wet into wet. Some down there, little down there. Okay, then we let that dry. So, unfortunately, this is definitely still wet in certain places, and there's also areas that are just very muted. Now, part of the thing about neutral tint is that's what it's going to do. It's going to neutralize colors. That's one of the reasons I kind of went for it, is to me, it has sort of this like nighttime sky effect. But I definitely want, some darker colors. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more water to the well that you guys can barely see, if you can see it at all, and grab some saturated color. Still working with the neutral tint because that's the color that's wet and that we're using as our background color. And I'm just going to kind of freehand, trying to make sure it's organic and loose, kind of stumbly shapes. Freehand some darker patches in. And I think that by kind of bumping up the contrast, we're going to bump up the interest. And then of course, when we are totally finished and we've removed all the masking fluid, we're going to have these areas of stark white, which should be interesting. Now another way you can get the sort of starry effect is you can just go in and splatter like white ink, white paint, or pearlescent paint, or colored ink on the background. You don't have to do it this way, but we've been talking so much about masking fluid. I thought this would be a good technique to kind of see the topic out. I think I went overboard over there. I'm also going to add just a little bit here on some of the lighter areas. Kind of push up that contrast a little bit. And then I think I'm going to give this a chance to dry. So this transition over here is a little abrupt, so I'm going to use some of that sort of tone we ended up with. I'm just going to kind of help transition things, reactivate things, smush them around a little bit. I have found that cotton rag watercolor papers tend to be easier to reactivate, which can be great to make corrections. Not always ideal for, you know, layering and glazing, but that's oh, and I want to use a paper towel now to sort of soften this transition. So I'm just using kind of a light stamping motion to pick up some of the excess water. Blend that in as well. But I think once this dries, we'll be good, and we just need to remove all the masking fluid. So this has had a chance to dry, and we're on our final stage, other than removing it from the block, of course, which I'll demonstrate for you guys, because I know that is not something everyone can do adeptly, myself included. And we're just going to use the rubber cement in sort of a, I'll zoom in actually so you guys can better see. I'm just going to use the rubber cement pickup with a little bit of friction, not too much, you don't want to tear up the paper, to remove the masking fluid, which leaves the white of the paper, or the color of the paper when we masked it earlier. And over the years, I have gotten all kinds of crazy advice for masking fluid, because it's always been something I've kind of struggled with. Lots of brand recommendations, lots of time recommendations, lots of, oh, don't put it on your paper when your paper is wet, oh, don't leave it on your paper longer than 24 hours, even you have to let it cure for 24 hours before you can even paint on it. And this is what I have found I have the best results with, and I think this is really your mileage may vary. Winsor & Newton's colorless art masking fluid, I found it doesn't stain the paper, unlike some of the ones that have a dye additive in them, and it doesn't tear up my paper either. Soaping up my brush allows me to put down a finer application of masking fluid. It doesn't get as goopy as it does when I put in like a dry brush and then try to remove the masking fluid afterwards. And I have found that having a thinner application, I usually get a better result. I do apply it onto wet paper, and I've had good results on cellulose papers generally, and cotton rag papers that don't have a whole lot of tooth to them. So smoother cotton rag papers will have, for me, will have a better result. In fact, I turned Shinzen watercolor paper, which is a handmade watercolor paper with a whole lot of texture. I basically turned it into toilet paper by putting on masking fluid and then removing it because the masking fluid just chewed it up. I like that we have multiple tones of masked area. It's really pretty up there where it's really noticeable. And I try not to leave my masking fluid on for longer than a day. I find that it'll start to bond with the paper when I do that. So I basically just let the paper dry and then try to remove my masking fluid. You'd probably not want to remove your masking fluid ever if it's wet, because you see how much pressure we're putting on the paper in order to remove the masking fluid? That would just turn into a disaster if the paper was still wet. And reading about masking fluid, many of the books that talk about using it will admonish that it will pick up your pencil lines. So I don't ever use it to mask out characters like in total, mostly because a lot of my line art is done in pencil for 7" Cara. But I will use it on top of inks. So I'm going to remove the rest of this masking fluid off camera, because this is probably satisfying to like 10% of you guys. Same sort of people maybe who watch like the pimple popper videos. But I imagine that for the rest of you guys watching me remove masking fluid with nothing really to add to the conversation is boring. So I will check in with you guys in a couple minutes. Alright, so all the masking fluid has been removed. Now you could go in and maybe using like Pro White or a pearlescent ink. You could do some more splatters if you wanted, but I'm pretty satisfied with this. I'm ready to be done with it. So I really enjoyed painting it. I hope you guys did too. I think this would make for a really good background. If you're like a brush letterer, you could do something in gold or in silver or in pearlescent white. It would really stand out against it. This could also make for a really cute card background, and then you could like heat emboss something opaque so that it really pops. But I hope you guys found this helpful. I hope you found it useful, and I hope to see you guys again really soon with another quick and easy watercolor tutorial. I hope you guys will check out my watercolor basics series here on the channel and over on the blog, and I hope you'll check out my beautiful all ages watercolor webcomic 7" Cara at 7inchcara.com. So bye guys!